The first thing I noticed was the list. It wasn't taped neatly or even stuck with a magnet. Just slapped onto the fridge with greasy fingers, like whoever wrote it didn't care if it was crooked. It said, Damien, wine. Trina, dessert. Myra, music. Blaine, surprise guest winking face. Me? That was it. An empty slot next to my name. Not even my name, actually. Just me. No honey. No babe. No Colt. Just lowercase, underlined in pink Sharpie, me. I stared at it for 5 whole minutes while the blender whirred in the background. She was making margaritas. At 10:17 a.m. On a Thursday. The office party wasn't until 6. You see the list? She shouted from the kitchen island. Don't be late tonight. It's important. I didn't say anything, because I knew the moment I opened my mouth, something would crack. Not my voice. Not even my composure. Something else. Something I hadn't figured out yet. She came around the corner in a blazer and no pants. Just a blazer. Her legs were bare and shining like she'd oiled them for battle. She kissed me like I was an umbrella stand and said, Try not to be weird tonight, okay? It's networking. Big people. Big energy. Big people. Big energy. I wish I was making this up. Anyway, I went. Of course I did. Because that's what you do when your marriage becomes performance art. You smile. You laugh. You clap when someone tells a story about their yacht hitting a rock in Santorini. You pretend to care about slideshows and crypto apps and collab synergies. But the moment I walked into that event, hosted inside a building that used to be a church and now sold luxury lighting fixtures, I knew something was off. I wasn't introduced to anyone. Not once. She floated away, blazer sparkling, laughing too hard at someone else's joke, while I hovered by the raw bar like a lonely crab in a tuxedo. That's when I saw him. Damien. The wine guy. The way he looked at her was not professional. Not even friendly. It was familiar. The kind of look you give someone when you've seen them in ways that require legally binding silence. He made a toast. She blushed. And then, God help me, he winked at me. Winked. At me. Like I was the family dog watching from under the table. I smiled. I nodded. I excused myself to the bathroom and didn't come back. Not because I was hurt. Not just because I was humiliated. But because I finally realized what that blank space on the list meant. It meant I was optional. Replaceable. Forgettable. But what no one at that party knew, not her, not Damien, not even the DJ playing remixes of Fleetwood Mac, was that I had brought something to the party. And it wasn't wine. It wasn't dessert. It wasn't music. It was something they would never, ever forget. There was a list on the fridge, and my name wasn't on it. This part continues with deeper twists, longer build-up, and more shocking revelations, written in full paragraph form, with emotional tension, a unique structure, and that same Reddit whiny husband tone. Part 2. The surprise guest wasn't me, but I brought one anyway. I didn't go home right away after leaving the party. I didn't even get in the car. I walked 6 blocks in the wrong direction just to hear my own footsteps over the thumping bass and clinking glasses that bled out into the cold from the gallery's old cathedral windows. I wasn't angry. Not yet. That came later. I was embarrassed. No, not even that. Reduced. That's the word. I felt like a typo at my own life's event. Like someone had sent out an invitation and forgot to uncheck the +1 box. I wasn't Colt. I wasn't a husband. I wasn't even an entry on a spreadsheet. I was me. Lowercase, unlabeled, undefined. I sat on a bench across from a deli that was closed for renovations. And that's when it hit me. That wink Damien gave me? That was pity. That smug little flick of his eye was the social version of tossing a dog a bone after sleeping with its owner. You want to know the worst part? It wasn't just the affair. It wasn't just the deceit. It was the effortlessness. The way Brianna didn't even try to cover it up. As if she'd already done the math and concluded I wasn't worth the cost of hiding. I must have sat there for over an hour. Then my phone buzzed. It was a group message. Her office circle. Brianna, Damien, Blaine, a few others. I was tagged on accident. Blaine, he left LOL. Thought he'd make a scene. Damien, that man couldn't make a scene if you gave him a script and a microphone. Brianna, chill. Be nice. He's sweet. Sweet. That word burned hotter than any insult. Sweet is what you call tea. A puppy. A resignation letter. I didn't reply. I didn't screenshot it. I didn't scream or cry or throw my phone into the gutter. I just stood up, walked to the gallery parking lot, and stared at the row of luxury vehicles lined up like some kind of capitalist catwalk. Then I remembered something. 3 days before the party, I had lunch with my cousin, Richie. Richie works security, freelance, mostly events, sometimes film sets, once even did surveillance for a private investigator. He's the kind of guy who always talks with his hand on your shoulder and asks questions like, "You ever wonder how easy it'd be to bug someone's coat pocket?" Back then, I thought he was just being weird. But he had shown me something over nachos. This little device the size of a Tic Tac container. Voice-activated. Wireless. Can record for 6 hours straight and automatically sync to a phone within 50 feet. I'd forgotten about it. Until that night. Until I saw Briona's coat. She left it hanging on a rack near the back door, right next to the VIP lounge setup where she and her inner circle were drinking tequila from crystal tumblers. I wasn't supposed to be there. I had left, remember? But I doubled back. Not into the gallery. That would have drawn attention. I went around through the alley, into the side catering door, past the kitchen, and into the coat area. I didn't speak. I didn't flinch. I just slipped the device into the lining of her coat, under the seam she never bothered to mend. Then I left. Again. This time for real. I walked 5 blocks, found an open Wi-Fi signal from a laundromat, connected, and watched as the waveform on my phone spiked and dipped. It was working. The device was already recording. And within minutes, I heard them. Briona. He looked like he was about to cry. I almost felt bad. Almost. Damien, you say that like it's a bad thing. That's what happens when people live boring lives. They rot on the inside and start calling it devotion. Briona, you don't understand. He used to be passionate. Now he just fixes lamps and alphabetizes spices. I don't think he's touched me in months. Damien, maybe that's because he knows you're mine now. Mine. He said it like he bought her at a charity auction. But the thing that broke me? She didn't deny it. Not once. That night, I didn't sleep. I drove to Richie's. I told him everything. And Richie didn't flinch. He poured me a glass of gas station whiskey and said, "You want to fix this quiet? Or you want to fix it loud?" I didn't answer. But he smiled anyway. Loud it is. And that's when we started planning the surprise I would bring to her next office party. Because this time, the surprise guest wouldn't be Blaine. It would be me. But not the me she wrote on the fridge. No, it would be the version she forgot existed. There's something unsettling about planning your revenge with a man who doesn't blink. Richie has this calm, slow way of speaking that makes everything sound like it's already happened. Like you're just catching up to a timeline that was decided long before you showed up. When I told him what Briona said, what she didn't say, he didn't ask if I was okay. He just nodded, lit a match, and said, "Good. You're awake now." We spent the next 2 days building something I never imagined I'd be part of. I'm not a vengeful man. I hate conflict. I don't even raise my voice at waiters when they mess up my order. But something in me had snapped, not with rage, but with clarity. This wasn't about getting even. This was about taking back the part of me that she had quietly shaved away over the years, piece by piece, until I barely recognized the version of myself she left behind in public. The next event on her calendar, the one I wasn't supposed to know about, was called Quarterly Vision Sync. That's how they named these things in her office. Not meeting, not presentation. A vision sync. As if marketing managers were building rocket ships in the break room. It was scheduled for a Friday at a luxury mountain lodge outside the city, a retreat for strategic alignment. I only knew about it because she left the invite open on her laptop. She must have thought I wouldn't notice. Or wouldn't care. They were carpooling. Briona was going with Damien, of course. Blaine and Trina were in a separate car. I watched her pack a bag with 2 swimsuits, for cocktail dresses, and zero shame. When I asked her what the trip was about, she said, "Just long meetings and forced fun. You'd hate it." Then she smiled that thin, glossy smile she always gives when she's lying, like her lips are afraid to touch the truth. That night, I called in a favor. 3 years ago, I helped an older woman fix a porch swing for free. She said it reminded her of her late husband and cried when I restrung the chains. Turns out her son works in private AV. Like, the serious kind. The kind that sets up surveillance for high-end clients. I never asked for anything in return until now. He met me at a diner at 2 a.m. and slid a case across the table like we were in a heist movie. Inside was a set of microcams, disguised as buttons. Range, 300 feet. Feed, encrypted. Battery, 48 hours, rechargeable. All I had to do was clip them onto something they wouldn't notice. That something? A gift bag. Briona's office had a tradition of exchanging gag gifts during retreats. Nothing expensive, just dumb inside jokes or trendy trinkets. So I dropped off a small wrapped box at her office with a note. To the best team in the world, from your silent admirer. Inside the box was a bobblehead shaped like a goat in a business suit. It was wearing little sunglasses and holding a tiny sign that said, "Pivot harder." It was stupid. Perfectly stupid. I knew it would get passed around, laughed at, maybe displayed for the weekend. I glued the cam into the sunglasses. By Friday evening, the feed was live. And what I saw made me physically ill. They weren't even subtle. Damien and Briona shared a room. They flirted openly in front of the others. During a fireside alignment exercise, she sat on his lap while Blaine read buzzwords from flashcards. Disruption, synergy, empathy. The irony was painful. At one point, Damien toasted to cutting dead weight before Q2, and the whole group howled. Briona added, "That applies to more than just clients." I shut my laptop and went outside. The night air felt like knives. I sat on my back steps for an hour, trying to breathe through the urge to scream. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a ritual. They had turned me into a joke, a background character in their little cult of ego and marketing slogans. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was determined. And the best part? They were documenting everything for their company's internal culture vlog. They even had a hashtag #SyncRetreat. So I downloaded it all, cut it, edited it, labeled each file with timestamps and names. No commentary, no accusations, just truth, lined up like teeth in a shark's jaw. Then I emailed it. Not to Briona, not to her boss, not to HR, but to everyone at the company. Because if they wanted to treat me like I didn't exist, I would haunt them like a ghost in their inboxes. And the subject line? It was short. It just said, "I brought something to the party after all." I didn't check my phone for the first hour after I hit send. There was something sacred about that silence, the kind you only get after doing something irreversible. I turned off all notifications, unplugged my laptop, and sat by the window with a cup of burnt coffee like a man waiting for the last siren of the apocalypse. You'd think I would feel nervous or anxious, but I didn't. Not really. I felt clean, lighter somehow, like I had finally told the universe, I exist, and it had whispered back, about time. The video went out at exactly 5:17 a.m. The subject line was cold. The content even colder. A folder. Inside, 9 clips. Each one perfectly labeled. Names, timestamps, locations, full sound. No extra edits. No commentary. Just raw, undeniable reality. The kind they could never spin into a marketing campaign. And I sent it to everyone. Not just her boss, not just the board, everyone. From the new interns to the CFO. From the front desk assistant to the IT guy. Every single person who ever nodded politely when Briona talked about authenticity got to see how authentic her personal brand really was. By 7:03 a.m. My inbox was vibrating like a beehive on fire. One-word replies. Shocked emojis. Screenshots of Slack messages I was never meant to see. The best one was a reply all from someone named Maribel in accounting. So, this what they mean by team building? At 7:26, Briona called. I didn't answer. At 7:29, she texted. What the F did you do? At 7:32, you ruined everything. Are you insane? At 7:35, I can fix this, but you need to stop. Take it down. Now. And then, finally, at 7:48, please. I let her sit in that silence. Around 9:15 a.m., she came home. I heard the door open like it owed her something. Her heels hit the floor like she was trying to murder the wood. I didn't greet her. I didn't get up. I just waited in the living room, sitting in the middle of the couch like a judge at a trial I didn't ask to attend. She stormed in like a hurricane dressed in corporate guilt. Eyes wild, hair messier than I'd ever seen it. Lipstick smudged like she'd wiped her face with the back of her hand on the way in. She stopped when she saw me. You don't get to do that, she spat. You don't get to destroy my career because you're sad I didn't introduce you at a party. I tilted my head. That's what this is about to you. Her nostrils flared. You humiliated me. You humiliated yourself, I said. I just hit play. She looked like she wanted to throw something. Maybe me. You blindsided me. No, I said calmly. You ignored me. There's a difference. And that's when the crack started. Not in her voice, not in her expression, in her armor. The image she built, so carefully curated and polished, began to fray at the edges. She sank into the chair across from me, suddenly small, like someone had pulled the oxygen out of her lungs. "I'll lose everything," she whispered. "Damien's been let go. Blaine, too. HR's doing an emergency audit. They're saying I abused my position, that I let personal relationships compromise leadership. I could lose my title, my benefits, my rep." I didn't blink. "You lost me first." And I meant that. Because what she still didn't understand, what none of them ever did, was that I never wanted revenge. I wanted recognition. I wanted to be seen. Not as decoration, not as dead weight, but as real. She looked at me with glassy eyes and said, "You don't get it, Colt. I had to survive there. I had to play the game. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I didn't plan it. It just happened." That was the moment I felt the final piece click into place. Because everything just happened with her. The drifting, the lies, the rewritten history. Her affair wasn't a choice, it was a mistake. Her indifference wasn't neglect, it was survival. And I, the man who stayed, supported, cooked, listened, waited, I was an inconvenience to the narrative she told herself to sleep at night. I stood up, walked past her, grabbed the small duffel bag I packed before she arrived. Just the essentials, a toothbrush, clothes, the USB stick, and Richie's burner phone. She didn't follow me. She didn't beg. She just sat there, staring at a version of herself that finally cracked under the weight of the truth. At the door, I turned back and said the only thing that felt true anymore. "I hope the list was worth it." Then I left. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt visible. But what Brianna didn't know, what nobody knew, was that the email wasn't the end. It was just the trailer. The real show was still coming. You would think that after nuking your wife's career and walking out the front door with a duffel bag and your dignity still barely stitched together, you'd feel triumphant. Liberated, even. But let me tell you something about so-called freedom. It's quiet. Unsettlingly quiet. Like walking through the empty shell of a house you once called home, now stripped of furniture, laughter, and meaning. It echoes in ways you don't expect. I didn't go to a friend's place. Didn't rent a motel. I drove back to the one spot no one ever checks anymore. My dad's old RV parked behind the barn on a vacant lot we inherited and never sold. No heat. No Wi-Fi. Just dust and silence and the kind of solitude that either heals you or buries you deeper. For the first 24 hours, I didn't speak to anyone. I sat with my thoughts, watched the cold air fog the cracked windows, and kept hitting replay on the phrase she said that still rang like a slap in my skull. "You ruined everything." As if I was the wrecking ball and not the rusted foundation she built her lies on. The truth is, Brianna still hadn't grasped what had happened. She thought this was about one email, one office scandal. She didn't realize the real damage hadn't even started yet. Not until the public found out. Because the story hadn't stayed internal. Someone, I still don't know who, leaked it. Could have been a junior employee, a rival manager, or someone in IT who saw a chance to knock the company off its polished pedestal. But by Monday afternoon, it was all over local media. Tech darling implodes after internal ethics scandal. Brand guru accused of inappropriate workplace behavior. Romance, retaliation, and a marketing meltdown behind the fall of Brianna R. They didn't use my name, not yet, but I saw myself in the margins. The silent husband, an alleged whistleblower. Sources say a spouse exposed the affair. One outlet called it a surgical strike of digital vengeance. I laughed out loud when I read that. Not because they were right, but because they had no idea what I was still holding back. See, the email wasn't my full hand. I didn't just send the raw clips. I had collected emails, too. Screenshots from her cloud backup. Photos she forgot to delete from shared albums. Voice memos from late-night rants she recorded to herself. The kind where she drunkenly admitted to manipulating board votes, skipping HR trainings, lying on investor calls. She thought she was being clever, documenting her power plays like war stories. She even saved a note titled, "The Cult Problem," where she described me as good optics, but creatively stifling. Yeah, she turned me into a bullet point on a career strategy. So I made a decision. I sent everything to a journalist. Not a tabloid vulture, a real one. Local, respected, Someone I knew wouldn't twist the story into a TikTok headline. Her name was Neve Dorsey. I'd followed her work for years. She broke a story on union busting at a logistics warehouse that led to congressional hearings. She didn't care about clicks. She cared about facts. I called from the burner phone, told her what I had, offered to send it anonymously. She hesitated at first, probably thought I was a bitter troll with a folder full of rumors. But the moment she heard one of the audio clips, Brianna laughing about manipulating supplier contracts while sleeping with their regional director, Neve went silent. Then she said, "Send it. All of it." And so I did. The article dropped 5 days later. Front page of the Sunday edition. No names redacted. No sugarcoating. She called it, "The Collapse of a Culture Brand, Sex, Lies, and Corporate Theater." And this time, they used my name. Colt Waverly. Husband. Witness. Architect of exposure. I didn't expect what came next. People started messaging me. Not just strangers, other spouses. Men and women who said, "My partner works there too." I knew something was off. One guy told me his wife confessed that she knew about Brianna and Damien for months, but was afraid to speak up. Another said his girlfriend left the company last year because of that clique. She called it a cult dressed in business casual. I had never felt solidarity before. I was always the quiet guy, the one in the back, the houseplant, as Brianna so cruelly put it. But now, I was the center of a storm she thought I'd never survive. The story wasn't just about cheating anymore. It was about power, manipulation, hypocrisy. It hit something bigger than my marriage. It touched a nerve people didn't even know they had. And that's when the real twist hit. Neve called me. She wanted an interview. On record. Face to face. I hesitated. I really did. Part of me wanted to vanish again. Take the win. Disappear into silence. But then I thought about the list on the fridge. About how I wasn't even assigned a task. Not even wine. And I said yes. The interview is tomorrow. I don't know what I'm going to say yet. But I know how I'm going to start. With 5 simple words. She said I was nothing. The morning of the interview, I sat in the parking lot outside the cafe for nearly 20 minutes before I even touched the door handle. Not because I was nervous about talking to Neve Dorsey. Though, sure, I was. But because I knew once I stepped inside, the story stopped being anonymous. No more hiding behind email addresses and forwarded audio clips. No more mystery man behind the leak. The moment I walked through that door, I was no longer the shadow in someone else's scandal. I was in it. Name, face, and all. Neve was already seated at a corner table when I finally pushed the door open. No camera crew. No recorder out in the open. Just a small notebook and a mug of black coffee. She didn't smile when she saw me. She just gave a small nod. The kind you give someone you respect but pity a little. The kind you give a person who survived something no one should have had to endure. "Colt," she asked. I nodded. "Thanks for coming. You sure about this?" I wasn't. I replied honestly. But I am now. We started slow. She asked background questions, things she could have guessed but needed confirmed. How long Brianna and I had been together, what she did for a living, how the company culture changed after her promotion. I answered plainly. I didn't dramatize. I didn't editorialize. I let the facts do the cutting. Then she leaned in and said, "Okay, tell me when it started feeling wrong." That's when something in me shifted. Because until that moment, I thought this whole saga had begun the night of the office party. The wink, the coat, the microphone. But sitting there across from someone who actually listened, I realized it went back much further. Past the lies. Past the affair. Past even the fridge list. It started the day she stopped laughing at my jokes. I said. Neve blinked. "Excuse me." "She used to laugh at everything," I said. "Even the bad stuff. Especially the bad stuff. We'd watch dumb horror movies and make up alternate endings. She once laughed so hard she spit orange soda on our couch. And then one day, she stopped. No warning. No argument. Just silence. I paused. And then came the edits. She started correcting how I spoke around her coworkers. Told me I sounded unpolished. Asked me not to wear certain shirts. Told me my boots were too loud. Bit by bit, she was sanding me down, rounding off my edges, until all that was left was something smooth, silent, unremarkable, something she could place next to her wine glass and forget about. Neve didn't interrupt. She just kept writing. And when I finally heard the things she said about me, I realized she didn't hate me. She just didn't see me anymore. And that's worse. Neve looked up. That's going in the article. I nodded. That's why I came. We finished the interview in an hour, but she stayed an extra 10 minutes. Off the record, she told me about the letters she'd received since her first article broke. People from inside the company, people outside of it, all reacting not just to Briona's downfall, but to the pattern it exposed. A system that encouraged surface-level connection and punished sincerity. A place where relationships were photo ops, and spouses were liabilities unless they served the brand. I told her I didn't want to be the poster boy for heartbreak. I wasn't looking for applause. She understood. I won't frame you as a saint, she said, but I'll make damn sure they don't turn you into a punchline. Before I left, she slid a small voice recorder across the table. There's something you should hear, she said. One of your wife's colleagues sent this in after the article dropped. You might want to listen to it in private. I didn't ask questions. I drove back to the RV. It was raining, light but steady. The kind that taps gently on the roof like a lullaby with bad intentions. I sat on the floor, cross-legged like a kid at story time, and pressed play. It was Briona. The voice memo was time-stamped 3 nights after I sent the email. She sounded drunk. Or exhausted. Or both. If you're hearing this, it's because I finally snapped. Or because I'm finally honest. I don't even know who I am anymore. I built something on sand, and now I'm shocked it sank. Colt, I know you hate me. You should. But I'm telling you, I kept the worst thing from you. Not Damien. Not the lies. Something else. I didn't tell you because it would have made you stay. And I couldn't let you stay. Not after what I did. The audio cut off. Just like that. No explanation. No ending. I played it again. And again. Every time, the same cliffhanger. I sat there for hours, trying to breathe around the question now screaming inside me. What did she do that was worse than everything I already knew? I had burned her world down, but it turns out she was hiding an ember even I hadn't seen. And now, I needed answers. Because I wasn't sure I wanted them. But I knew I couldn't live without them. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even close my eyes. The audio looped in my head like a poisoned lullaby. It would have made you stay. And I couldn't let you stay. Not after what I did. Over and over, those words scratched behind my eyes like rusted nails on a chalkboard. I kept thinking, how could there be more? What was left to take from me that she hadn't already torn to shreds and passed around like a joke at a networking event? I called Richie just before sunrise. He answered on the first ring, as if he knew. She left something out, I said. My voice sounded far away, even to me. You want me to find it? He asked, like I was ordering coffee. Yeah, I do. I didn't have much. No clue where to start. Just her voice, the weight of what she didn't say, and one cold fact. Whatever Briona hid from me wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. A choice she made while looking directly at the man she used to call her future. Richie started digging. I don't know how he did it. I've stopped asking. He has friends in places that aren't on maps. Within hours, he had access to her old emails, cloud storage, and a few company records that I'm not legally supposed to know about. He sent me a zip folder titled Brace Yourself. It took me 20 minutes to open it. Inside were 3 documents. The first was a resignation letter. From me. Or rather, forged in my name. It was dated a year ago, addressed to a job I had applied for, a local design firm that offered a full-time position after reviewing my freelance portfolio. I never heard back. I thought they ghosted me. Turns out they responded. Twice. With an offer. She deleted the emails. And then, and this is what broke me, she replied from a dummy account she created using my name and wrote, "Thank you for the opportunity, but I've decided to decline the offer. I'm focusing on family priorities at the moment." Family priorities. She wrote that. She posed as me. Killed the job before I ever saw the chance. She didn't even tell me it existed. I spent months wondering if I wasn't good enough, if I was invisible in the industry. I blamed myself. I questioned my value, my skills, my worth. Meanwhile, she was sipping cocktails at rooftop mixers, telling everyone I was too sensitive and lacking ambition. The second document was a copy of a therapy intake form for couples counseling, filed under her name, signed only by her. And in the section marked Relationship Goals, she had written in bold, "I want help exiting this marriage without damaging my reputation." She had already planned the escape. Before the party. Before the coat. Before the recording device. All of this, everything I thought was unraveling in real time, was already over. She was just managing optics. She didn't want me. She just didn't want to look bad for leaving me. And then came the third document. This one, I stared at for a long time. It was a form from a fertility clinic, dated 2 years ago. She'd gone for a procedure, a consultation, something marked as private. I never knew. We never talked about kids, not because I didn't want them, but because she always said, maybe someday. But in the clinic notes, under the field marked partner notified, she had checked no. Then in the margins, someone had handwritten, patient requests confidentiality due to marital instability. And that was it. The line, the gavel, the cold, final crack in the glass. She went alone, made a decision alone, about our future, without even giving me the illusion of involvement. That's what she meant when she said, it would have made you stay. That's why she kept it from me. Because deep down, she knew if she told me the truth, if I had seen the betrayal in its full, unedited glory, I would have done the one thing she couldn't control. I would have fought for her. And she didn't want to be fought for. She wanted out. Quietly. Cleanly. Like stepping out of a dress she didn't like anymore. I sat on the RV floor for hours, knees pulled to my chest, trying to understand how someone who once begged me to teach her how to make grilled cheese could become this stranger. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just changed. Right there, in the dust and the silence and the stink of betrayal, something inside me solidified. It wasn't revenge anymore. It wasn't justice. It was closure. But not the gentle kind. The kind that ends chapters with burned pages and locked doors. The next day, I called Neve. I want to do the follow-up, I said. You sure? She asked. It'll go national this time. I wanted to. She paused. What's the angle? I told her. She went silent for a long time. Then she said, Jesus. Okay, we'll run it next week. But Colt. Yeah. Once this story's out, there's no going back. There's nothing to go back to. And I meant it. Breonna wrote me out of the narrative. But I picked up the pen. I sat in the green room alone for 25 minutes before they called me in. A national morning show. Not the kind that does screaming headlines or tabloid fodder. This one was known for long-form pieces, human interest, interviews that didn't end with applause, but with quiet reflection. They brought me in through a back entrance. No makeup, no wardrobe change. Just me, in the gray button-down Breonna once called forgettable, and a notebook I hadn't opened since the day I left her. The producer gave me a gentle nod. Take your time. Speak how you need to. The world already knows what happened. Now they need to hear you. The lights came on. The host smiled. She introduced me not as the betrayed husband, not as the whistleblower, but simply as Colt Waverly, someone who chose truth over silence. She asked me everything. Not in a prying way, in a human way. When did I know things were breaking? Why did I send the video? What would I say to her now, if she were watching? And when I got to the part about the fridge list, the audience went still. I wasn't mad that my name was missing, I said. I was mad because I wasn't even assigned a role. Everyone had a job to do at that party. I had a question mark. A blank space. Like I was an afterthought in my own life. The host leaned forward. But you filled in that space. You gave yourself a role. I nodded. I did. You turned your silence into a signal. And in that moment, I understood something I hadn't until then. I hadn't just exposed Breonna. I hadn't just taken back my dignity. I had created something. A ripple. A reckoning. Something that forced people to ask themselves, who's the person I'm ignoring right now? Whose name is missing from the list I keep in my life? After the segment aired, I didn't expect much. A few polite nods from strangers maybe. Some emails. Maybe someone would recognize me in line for gas. But what happened next caught me off guard. Letters. Hundreds of them. Handwritten, digital, typed. From all over the country. People who said they'd been invisible in their marriages. In their jobs. In their families. People who were treated like background noise for years, until one day they snapped or gave up. But my story made them pause. Made them speak. One man wrote, I haven't said a real sentence to my wife in 6 years. Tonight, I told her everything. A woman said, you made me realize I've been filling in everyone else's blanks and forgetting my own name. Not anymore. And one message, one that still sits in my inbox, unread except for the preview line, came from Breonna. I haven't opened it. I don't need to. Because the ending isn't about her anymore. The ending is about where I am now. 2 months after the interview, I launched a podcast. Not about revenge. Not about relationships. About recognition. About hearing the people no one listens to. Janitors. Caregivers. grieving fathers, burned-out teachers, forgotten spouses, people who were once just plus ones and what's his names. It's called Name on the List, and it's doing well, better than I ever imagined. I record out of a small studio in the back of Richie's cousin's old video rental store. The shelves are still full of dusty VHS tapes. The walls smell like the 90s. But it works. It's honest. I rebuilt my furniture business too. Slowly, one table at a time. And people write me asking for custom pieces named after episodes. One woman ordered a bookshelf called Closure with Teeth. I smiled for 20 straight minutes when I built it. As for love, I'm not rushing it. But there's someone. Her name is Elise. She teaches music therapy to autistic kids. We met at a dog park. She told me my mutt has grumpy poet energy. I told her laugh sounds like punctuation. We haven't labeled it yet. And maybe we won't. Not for a while. But she listens. Really listens. And last week, she surprised me with something. She made me dinner. Nothing fancy. Just grilled cheese and tomato soup. But when I opened the fridge to put away leftovers, I saw a piece of paper stuck there with a magnet shaped like a piano. It said, Elise, salad, Colt, music, both dishes. Together, everything else red heart. I stood there for 5 minutes, staring at my name, spelled right, capitalized, on the list, exactly where it belonged. And I smiled, because after everything, that was the revenge. That was the win. That was the ending I didn't know I needed.